In the 1960s, America faced forests so dense that saws simply could not keep up. Engineers built a 60-ton steel monster, not to cut, but to crush 100-foot trees into mulch in seconds. The Letourneau G175 tree crusher was born from post-war land hunger, turning ancient wilderness into raw ground for roads and suburbs almost overnight. Yet how did it actually flatten giants that had ruled undisturbed for centuries? And what did it cost those gutsy enough to climb aboard? If you respect the men who built the world before it was safe and easy, subscribe, because these stories do not survive unless we keep telling them. Steel thunder rolls through the forest and the ground shivers. The Letourneau G175 doesn't cut, it doesn't saw, it crushes. This machine was born for one job: flatten trees that stood 100 feet tall and 4 feet thick, not in hours, but in seconds. The G175's massive rollers, armored with 6-inch steel grousers, bite into living timber with every turn. Diesel engines roar, powering electric motors that deliver steady, relentless torque, a force no axe or chainsaw could ever match. The cab rattles as the machine lurches forward, a wall of steel and torque. Wood groans, then snaps. Trunks that took centuries to grow collapse under the relentless weight, splintered, flattened, left as debris in the wake of rolling iron. No other machine looked or sounded like this. Only 2 G175s were ever built. One cleared more than 2,000 acres in Vietnam, crushing jungle that had resisted everything else. Another sits silent now in Mackenzie, British Columbia, a monument to a time when progress was measured in acres cleared, not trees saved. This wasn't gentle work. It was loud, violent, and fast, built for men who measured their days in diesel, sweat, and the echo of breaking wood. If you respect the men who built the world before it was safe and easy, subscribe. These stories don't survive unless we keep telling them. After World War II, the United States found itself in a race against its own growth. Millions of veterans returned home, and the population soared by 30 million between 1945 and 1960. The suburbs exploded outward, swallowing farmland and woodland to make room for the new American dream. Federal policies fueled this momentum. The GI Bill made homeownership possible for families, and the Interstate Highway Act of 1956 committed the country to build 41,000 miles of roads. State and federal agencies, flush with post-war budgets, drew up plans for reservoirs, power corridors, and new towns. Every project needed land, fast. But the land was not empty. Dense forests, tangled underbrush, and swampy ground stood in the way. Traditional logging crews worked with saws and axes, felling one tree at a time, then hauling trunks out by horse or crawler tractor. That process could take days for a single acre, and the scale of demand made it hopelessly slow. For a new highway or dam, the goal was not to harvest timber, but to erase the forest entirely and leave a surface ready for earth moving. The forest became an obstacle to be removed, not a resource to be managed. Agencies like the Army Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation began looking for ways to clear hundreds of acres in weeks, not years. The logic was simple. If you could flatten the trees where they stood, you could build roads, lay pipelines, or flood valleys for reservoirs without waiting for loggers. The urgency of post-war progress demanded machines that could keep pace with the country's ambition. R.G. Letourneau was the kind of builder who saw obstacles as puzzles waiting for more torque. Born in 1888 and almost entirely self-taught, he founded his company in 1929 and spent decades designing machines that could survive far from any factory floor. His philosophy was simple: make it strong, make it fixable, and never let a breakdown stop the work. Letourneau's machines did not aim for comfort. They aimed for reliability in the harshest conditions. He believed that a good operator and a solid wrench could solve almost any problem if the machine was built with field repairs in mind. That is why his designs used welded steel frames and straightforward systems, not delicate parts or fancy finishes. Diesel-electric drives became his signature in the 1950s, delivering steady power without complicated transmissions that could fail in the mud. For Letourneau, Every bolt and bearing had to make sense to a mechanic covered in grease, working by lantern light. His legacy was not luxury, it was the confidence that no matter how rough the job or how remote the site, his machines would keep moving forward. Inside the G175, power started with a bank of diesel engines, massive blocks of iron designed for raw endurance. Those engines didn't drive the rollers directly. Instead, they spun generators, turning diesel fuel into electricity on the spot. That current flowed to electric motors mounted near the rollers, delivering steady, unstoppable torque. There were no complicated gearboxes to jam, no belts to snap, just a direct surge of power from engine to steel. The mainframe was a welded skeleton of thick plate, built to absorb shock and flex without failing. At the front, a heavy push bar jutted out, bracing against tree trunks and tipping them just enough for the work to begin. Two 5-bladed rollers, each armored with 6-inch grousers, rotated under the cab and at the rear. As the G175 advanced, the push bar knocked trees off balance. The rollers bit into the base, and the machine's 60-ton weight pressed down, crushing trunks into splinters. Every part of the system was engineered for one purpose: to turn living forest into flattened debris using mass, leverage, and relentless electric force. A man behind the levers could feel the whole machine talking through steel and vibration. There were no warning lights, no computers, only the pitch of the diesel, the shudder in the seat, and the resistance in the controls. Operators learned to read these signals, judging when the rollers bit too deep or when the ground softened under the massive weight. Every pass demanded focus. Push the throttle too hard, and the machine could bog down or break a grouser. Ease up too soon, and the tree might stand its ground. The rhythm was relentless. Push, topple, crush, advance. When something snapped or bent, the work didn't stop. In field camps miles from any parts store, mechanics kept the G175 alive with torches, hammers, and whatever scrap they could find. A bent roller could be straightened by heat and force. Grease covered everything: hands, clothes, even the food. Repairs happened in mud, rain, or darkness, because downtime cost money and progress waited for no one. Out here, it wasn't just a machine clearing land, it was men and iron wrestling the wild with nothing but skill and stubbornness. Mud waits like a trap, swallowing steel without warning. Root mats stretch beneath the surface, thick as cables, ready to snag a roller or rip out a driveline. Rocks buried in the soil can shatter a grouser or split open a gearbox. When the ground turns soft, 60 tons of iron can sink in minutes, leaving the crew scrambling for jacks and chains. Slopes pose another threat. One wrong angle, and the G175's high center of gravity can turn a hillside into a potential rollover. Operators remember the sudden tilt, the machine shifting under them, the scramble to throttle back before gravity takes control. Even a moment's distraction can mean disaster. No alarms, no cameras, just instinct and experience standing between the crew and catastrophe. Out here, the forest is dangerous, but the ground itself is always waiting to claim the careless. Every job carried a risk that could not be measured in paychecks. Before safety rules and warning buzzers, a single mistake could flip a machine, snap a cable, or send a tree crashing where no one expected. Operators trusted their instincts, but the forest and the ground never played fair. By the 1970s, new laws started to change the game. OSHA standards brought hard hats, rollover guards, and real training to a world that had run on grit and luck. Fatalities dropped, and more workers went home at night. That's real progress, and it's worth remembering. Subscribe if you think the people who did the hardest jobs deserve to be remembered, because history forgets workers first. Today, regulations like NEPA make such brute force clearing almost unthinkable. Yet the drive to reshape land for human need remains. Progress leaves scars we rarely see. Every field, road, and reservoir still begins with a choice about what is worth erasing. The ground never forgets. Thanks for watching.